What I'm about to say to you, I just can't believe myself either, but the software tech stocks, they're finally on sale and they're at reasonable valuations. So in this video, together, you and I, holding hands, will be breaking down some of the more popular names, and then I'll give you my honest take as to whether or not I think they're a good deal based on their business, their fundamentals, and the resiliency of their future in the face of AI. But first and foremost, why are the software and tech stocks selling off as a whole? But I want to caveat that by saying individually, some are crushing it and they're putting up monster numbers, but overall, it does not matter because big money's rotating out of them because number one, inflation is still way too high. Number two, AI is going to make their business model obsolete. I know, that one drives me nuts. Number three, AI infrastructure, the physical side that's supporting the AI bubble, that's the new gold rush, right? So when we think about the chips, the data centers, the memory storage like Micron, HVAC, and dare I even say the construction companies. So I would argue those are the big three reasons as to why Wall Street feels bearish about these software stocks. But then again, maybe they're onto something because maybe right now pumping my money into software stocks is like, investing into newspaper stocks heading into the age of the internet. But having said that, I'm not going to go as far as to say I think this is a generational opportunity, like once in a lifetime, but I do think some of these stocks are better poised for the future than others. I think some of the stocks that we're going to cover today, I think they're screwed. So to kick things off, the first company that I want to address, click on, by the way, I'm using Adobe Express, which is the web-based free version of company number one, and that's going to be Adobe. I just want to address the elephant in the room. I think whether you look left, right on Twitter or on your wife's boyfriend's phone, I think everyone's talking about Adobe and everyone thinks that it's undervalued. Now, do I think Adobe is undervalued? Well, the answer is going to shock you, but I think so. Now, at the time of making this video, it's a long weekend because the stock market's closed on Monday. I don't like long weekends for that reason. I prefer the Monday to Friday because the stock market's kind of exciting to me. But anyways, at the time of making this video, Adobe's currently trading for a PE ratio of a 17. Their forward trading multiple based on next year's earnings per share, which is also known as the profits per share, is a 12.6. Now, what makes this even more wild and hard to grasp is that 365 days in the stock market, the performance 29% into the red, past 5 years, negative 35%. So you would think their financials and fundamentals absolutely trash, but you tell me, a double-digit rate growth in their top line year after year ever since 2016. Now, obviously, it's no longer growing, 22%, 24% year over year, but rather a steady 10%. And that's because I think they reached market saturation, meaning anyone and everyone's already doing business with Adobe. So now they have to branch out into Asia Pacific, Africa, South America in order to acquire new customers. But in North America, I think they're pretty saturated, but still, to execute a 10% growth in their top line, I think that's pretty solid. Take a look at their profits per share. 2016 was $2.32. Do you understand what that means? That means in the bottom line, you divide it by all the shares outstanding, and as a result, you're seeing $2.32 of profits per share. And that's why some people make a huge deal about shares outstanding. Because if there's less shares outstanding, then that financially engineers the EPS, the bottom line per share, in order to be bigger, in order to be stronger, in order to be juicier. You know what I'm saying? You fast forward about 10 years, and now we're talking about $16.70 of profits per share. And some of you might be curious, what's the difference between the basic and the diluted? The best way that I can describe it is the diluted shares outstanding takes into account the RSUs, the stock-based compensation, and it's the line item that most investors in Wall Street uses in order to calculate the PE ratio, which is you take the stock price of $296 and then you divide it by the EPS diluted, which is $16.70. Now, we can sit here all day, look at Adobe's numbers, talk about it until our faces turn blue. But the fact of the matter is, the market feels absolutely bearish about them, even though I think no matter what metric or fundamental you're talking about, I think it looks phenomenal. You want to take a look at their free cash flow? Check this out. Their free cash flow year over year, dude, this is just... Are you serious? This is a textbook example of a compounder. $9.8 billion of free cash flow. So riddle me this. If they're dying in the hands of AI and it's making their business model obsolete, then why the heck are every single one of their financials and numbers growing up and to the right? And so when we think about Adobe, their PDF business is quietly crushing it. Their creative suite is under some pressure because now there's Canva, there's Fodar, and there's a lot of different AI applications that can pretty much do what Adobe's suite can do. But at the end of the day, I think their overall numbers look pretty darn strong. And the kicker is, Adobe's AI image and video tools, they're built to be copyright safe. So if you're Nike, if you're Procter & Gamble, and you're trying to roll out $1 billion marketing plan and advertising, do you really want to gamble by using some dodgy or sketchy startup's AI generative tool that may or may not put you into trouble because that image or whatever they created in their software is not copyright safe? So you might make the wrong assumption here and think that I'm invested into them because I'm thinking so highly and speaking so strongly of them, but I'm not. I'm just the guy on the sidelines that's watching them get beat the freak up, and I'm about to jump in and be like the hero with the cape on. I'm about to save them because it's like, dude, I think with the numbers that they're executing, to have a forward PE ratio of a 12.6, this is nonsense. This is just like straight up racism, discrimination, a hate crime. This is a scandal. But, based on my homework, I think I can see why they're selling off. I think the real reason that Adobe's getting crushed is the agentic shift. So for decades, right, Adobe's business model, it was predicated upon charging per person that's sitting in a seat because that person's going to utilize the Adobe Enterprise software. But now that everything is shifting to agentic AI, where the AI model and the software does the actual work instead of being a tool that a human utilizes, the thing is, at the end of the day, for a marketing department that's rolling out videos and commercials for a company, you might have like 20 people, right? In the future, you're not going to need that many butts and seats, which means ultimately Adobe's going to earn less money, right? Because you might only have a team of 6 doing the exact same output and creating the same results with 6 people because agentic AI is doing most of the heavy lifting. And so what's happening is the market is taking that into account and they're pricing Adobe for death. Because usually when you see a PE ratio of a 12.6, the top line usually grows at like 1% and the EPS is pretty much flat. But for Adobe, what we're seeing is the complete opposite trend. So I think the agentic AI shift is real, and I think that's going to hurt them, but I also think they're not going to just sit there with their thumbs right up their butthole, right? I think they're going to charge per result, so per creation. So instead of charging for per person that's using their software at the enterprise level, I think they're going to change their business model and adapt. So when it comes to Adobe, I'm judging them based off of 3 criteria metrics. Number 1 is their business model and their business quality and their economic moat. Do I see a future in which they thrive in face of AI? And does their competitive advantage keep their enemies at bay, away from the fortress and away from the castle and the gold, right? Number 2 is their financials and fundamentals, which we just learned. I think it's phenomenal. And then number 3 is their valuation. I think they're absolutely undervalued. So when it comes to Adobe, I don't know if this is going to come as a surprise, but I absolutely think they're undervalued. Now, if you're curious about my fair value estimate for Adobe, did you know that I made a 3-part video series that covers the price targets for over 30 stocks? Go and give that a watch after this one. Now, the next software business we're going to talk about is Salesforce, ticker symbol CRM. We're going to put them right here just for now. No way, Jose. They're basically in the business of selling enterprise customer relationship management software that helps manage interactions across the entire life cycle of a customer, ranging from the leads, the sales, to the follow-ups. And if we jump on over to look at their stock price pattern, the current trading multiple is a 30, but don't look at the current PE ratio when it comes to a growth or software company, because they do a lot of acquisitions, mergers, and it makes their earnings per share all wonky in the current year. However, if you bake it in with next year's EPS, you get a more accurate picture because there's no financial engineering happening with like tax write-offs or intangible goodwill write-offs or any adjustments made on an accounting basis. So for all case and purposes, when I see Salesforce, I see them in the lens of having an 18 PE ratio. And I'm looking at it right there, 17.9. Past 1 year in the red, 30%. So a very similar story to Adobe. And they also own Tableau and Slack, which is my preferred chat software. When I used to work in corporate America, I know some people prefer Microsoft Teams. I was always a Slack guy. And just like with Adobe, you would think that Salesforce, their numbers are absolutely horrendous, atrocious even. And that's why they're in the red by 30%. But friends and family, just take a look at their revenue situation year after year. This is a company that I have made parallel comparisons to Microsoft because they're also in the business of enterprise software. This is a company that is so sticky that you will never jump ship to one of their competitors. Once Salesforce has their stinky, dirty little claws into your business, you're basically going to just stay in their ecosystem and integrate their other offerings because the switching costs are just way too deadly. And if you take a look at the improvement in their bottom line per share, I mean, look at this, right? In 2016, negative 7 cents of profits per share. So they were basically losing money in order to keep the lights on. And now we're talking about $7.49 of bottom line per share. That's an increase of 23% year over year. So the fundamentals are intact. And even though this company has a lot of stock-based compensation at $3.2 billion, what I care about is that their free cash flow makes up for it, right? And their free cash flow situation, year after year without fail, it grows up into the right. Now, obviously, the growth rate is slowing down, and that's because they're making pretty aggressive acquisitions in order to keep their business relevant in 2026, 2030, and beyond. They also pay a dividend. Right, a 0.7% dividend yield. That is so juicy. No, it's not, okay? And that's because they've only been paying a dividend for roughly 2 years. However, when it comes to Salesforce and their future in light of AI, their biggest catalyst right now is Agentforce, which is their agentic AI bet that the future of software is not tools for humans to use, but rather these autonomous agents doing everything for you, which means the entry-level positions that handle the CRM platform and softwares right now, those positions will most likely be replaced with Agentforce. So when I think about Salesforce and AI making them obsolete, dude, it couldn't be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, I think they're riding the wave and the momentum of AI, making their business model and value proposition for customers even better. Now, I might be delusional when I say this, but I think in the near future, in the next 5 years, I think Salesforce will be a part of the conversation of being a member of the Mag 7. Now, I don't know who they would replace. Maybe the name will change in the future, like Mag 8, Mag 9, but that's how highly I think of this company. Now, having said that, I'm actually not invested into them. Now, I used to be, but I sold out of them at $265 a share back in December because I just had this weird feeling in my left nipple that 2026 was going to be volatile. And sure enough, dude, we're only in January, and we've already had the Venezuela situation, the Iran crisis, and now with the Greenland mess, I just had this weird feeling that all of my holdings were going to get shaved and destroyed. So I'm kind of glad that I sold out of them, but I'm personally thinking about jumping back in because I'm not joking. I think Salesforce at its current price point of about 227, trading multiple of 17.9, take a look at their historic PE ratio, right? Their forward PE ratio usually ranges from like a 60 all the way to like a 30. Right now, they're at a 17.9. So they're at a historically low valuation. The value proposition, their business model seems pretty resilient. And when I think about their economic moat situation, they have the network effect, the ecosystem, high switching costs. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but I do think they belong in this category with Adobe. I also think Salesforce is undervalued. Now, between the two of them, it's really hard to say who would be the better one because I honestly think they're peers. It's like if you're a family man or if you own dogs, trying to pick your favorite dog or your favorite child. It's really hard. But if someone forced me to, like you were holding a baseball bat to my knee and you're about to smack it unless I picked one, this might be petty, but I would go with Salesforce because they pay a dividend. Whereas with Adobe, if I buy into them and they dip even further to $250 a share, $200 a share, I've got nothing to show for it as I wait for their rebound. But with Salesforce, I mean, I know their dividend yield sucks and it's not that high, but at least I get paid some money as I wait psychologically for their rebound, right? So the dividend effect makes a huge difference in my opinion. But for the purposes of this video, I genuinely think they're peers. Now, if we move on to the next software stock that's on sale, I think this one is pretty popular in certain circles, and that's going to be Intuit. This is a business previously I had no interest in because their valuation was always far too fat. Their PE ratio, every single time that I get curious about looking into them, like in 2020, 2022, or even 2025, their PE ratio always like a 50, 70, or even like 100. So I immediately delete them because I don't think their financials and fundamentals ever justified that type of premium. Because when your PE ratio is above a 50, you're basically priced for perfection. Meaning, if anything happens, any setbacks, any scandals, if somebody walks into your corporate building's lobby and lets out a dirty little fart, that's enough to make the stock price crater. So when there's that type of perfection baked in, I get nervous. I would rather invest into something with a PE ratio of like a 22, maybe even like a 29 if we're talking about Amazon, Nvidia, Microsoft. But what at like 100, like Intuit, I'm just like, But backing up real quick, what exactly, I think their ticker symbol was kind of fun to say, INTU. What exactly do they do? So Intuit owns the software to do taxes, accounting, payroll, personal finance in the form of Credit Karma, and an email marketing tool. So they're the parent company of TurboTax. And I think a lot of small business owners, they actually utilize TurboTax, so you probably are familiar with Intuit. And as we take a look at their trading multiple, it's currently 37, but remember, with a software growth-oriented business, you gotta look at next year. You have to. Their forward trading multiple is a 23. Now, finally, we're talking. And the crazy thing about Intuit is, $545 a share, but the valuation says it's not too expensive, okay? Take a look at 1 year, negative 12%. Okay, but that bakes in the price that they were back in January of 2025. If you just do year to date, which is the past 2.5 to 3 weeks, dude, we're talking about negative 17% into the red. So this company right now, I did a technical analysis on, they're free falling right now. I don't see any line of support anytime soon. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and assume that they're going to be testing the prices that they were back in 2023, which if you take a look at it, in 2023, they were roughly like $497, maybe even like $511 a share. I feel like that's the next pit stop for them. They're falling fast. Take a look at their financials. Everything looks pretty good. It checks out, in my opinion. Taking a look at their earnings per share situation as well. I mean, that is just phenomenal. 41% growth in their profitability. Dude, that's just crazy. Take a look at their free cash flow situation, $6.3 billion. Break it down on a per share basis, $22.63 of free cash flow per share. Financially and fundamentally, I think out of the 3 companies that we have covered so far, I think Intuit is pound for pound the best in terms of straight numbers and data. But then again, at the end of the day, they're also getting spanked in the butt right now with a huge paddle, right? So they're also getting grouped into the category of software stocks getting sold off in general, but more specifically for Intuit, I think their sell-offs based on the proposed government-sponsored free tax filing software that's always being mentioned or whispered, right? But Intuit pays millions of dollars every year lobbying so that can never happen because they make way too much money from tax services. But not only that, at their most recent earnings, their guidance going forward, it wasn't bullish. It was rather just moderate, just average. And so when you're priced to perfection, take a look at their ratio. So PE ratio last year was around a 56. That's why the market punished them really hard. You can't just give a glowing guidance. You have to give the kind of guidance that makes every nipple on Wall Street perky because you're so excited about the business prospects of this company. But at a 56 PE ratio, if you don't do that, you're going to get hammered. And that's why they're selling off fast and hard. However, do keep in mind about 1/3 of their revenue comes from the tax software. Because I think when it comes to Intuit, I think too many people, we associate it with only the taxes. However, just like Salesforce, Intuit's rolling out agentic AI into all of their software offerings in order to automate all the stuff that they sell. So payroll, invoicing, tax filing, the email marketing, I think it's called MailChimp or something like that, agentic AI. So when it comes to Intuit, I'm going to be honest with you, I think this one is really tough because their business model right now seems to be durable, robust, resilient, but in fact, there are free tax filing software, and some people are even advocating utilizing AI in order to do your taxes. That way you can just do a DIY, especially if you come from a complex filing background. Just like the healthcare system here in the US, by the way, my stance, my perspective, I think it needs a rehaul, a transformation. It needs to be broken down and built back up from the bottom to the top, from left to right. I think our healthcare system is absolutely broken. Having said that, the health insurance sector, dude, it's way too powerful. I don't think anything's going to change, at least in the next 10 years. Absolutely not, because I did more of a deep dive into the insurance sector a few months ago, and I found out that one of Trump's sons-in-law, he's one of the top leaders for Oscar Health, which is a health insurance company. Likewise, when it comes to Intuit and having to pay to file taxes, dude, I know that sounds absolutely backwards because in other countries, first world countries, there's no such thing. You don't have to file taxes because essentially it's already done at the end of the year. So you just get a tax refund at the end of the year, like magic. Here in the US, it's convoluted, it's complicated, and we have to pay in order to file taxes. It's backwards. So having said that, I think their economic moat, it's intact for now, but I think going forward, just like with the health insurance space, I think there's a lot of uncertainty because I think now the masses, the rich, the poor, I think we're all realizing health insurance, dude, it's a scandal, it's a scam. Likewise, the for-profit tax industry, I know it rubs a lot of people in the wrong way. So I don't feel confident about their business model in that regard, but the fact that they're embracing and integrating and implementing agentic AI into all of their software, I don't think AI is just going to put them in a headlock and choke them out, right? And on the other side of this very small hand, I think their financials and fundamentals, I mean it when I said it, the best out of the 3 we've covered so far. However, when it comes to their valuation, I don't think they're at a good price yet. I think there's a lot more room to fall. You can quote me on that. I'm not a magic genie in a bottle that you only summon when you're taking a dump on the toilet. Like, oh, I wonder what Amos thinks. No, I'm not that kind of guy. But if I had to make an educated guess, I'm going to assume that Intuit's going to touch $500 a share next. And who is to say it's not going to be $450 or even $400 a share by the time you watch this video, right? So do I think they're a good price right now? No, I don't. And because they're missing one of the attributes right there, number 3, I think for Intuit, I think it's almost fair to place them right there. I think they're good, but I don't think they're one of the best opportunities in the software space. Now, I think I said a lot. Let's move on to the next one. And this is a company that I bought and sold out of last year for a 15% gain. And that is going to be Toast. Now, before you get an aneurysm and you get really angry, remember, with growth-oriented software stocks, take the current PE ratio with a grain of nipple. Instead, you look at the forward trading multiple of a 29. And it's still kind of expensive, I agree, but the average PE ratio of the S&P 500 is a 31 as of right now. Take a look at them. Past 1 year, negative 8%. And if we just do year to date, negative 5.6%. However, financially, dude, where are my freaking manners? What exactly is Toast? So they're basically a one-stop shop, hardware and software for over 150,000 restaurants that takes care of the inventory, reservations, orders, payroll, and even handing out loans. So this is a do-it-all for a very specific niche industry, the restaurant space. I really like how they doubled down on that because one of their competitors, Shift4, I think they're encroaching upon their territory, but from my understanding, more people prefer Toast when it comes to handling the restaurant operations than they do for Shift4. And that's why I think Shift4's value proposition is for the stadiums, the entertainment venues, sporting events. If you go to a college football game and you order some popcorn with the person that's walking around, get your popcorn. They're usually going to be using a Shift4 payment processing hardware. But I digress. So why does Toast trade for such a high premium? Because if you take a look at their revenue situation, $600 million in 2019, right? Now they're just flirting with $6 billion of revenue. By the way, I listened to this hour-long interview with the founder and CEO of Toast, brilliant dude from MIT, and it comes as no surprise to me that they're growing their revenue at such a high rate year after year, knowing how intelligent that guy is. However, if we jump on over to their cash flow situation, what I want to take time calling out is their free cash flow situation. $564 million of free cash flow, and the percentage change year over year, dude, it almost makes me salivate. Dude, that's so freaking juicy. A triple-digit growth rate year over year, dude, that's no small feat. That's very impressive. Now, for some of you, you might dismiss Toast altogether because I think some people are genuinely, they're married to just one metric. And if a company doesn't hit that one metric, they're absolute trash, even if the other 99% of them, beautiful. Some people, that's the PE ratio. For others, it's the shares outstanding. Just to paint some examples, right? So if we take a look at their shares outstanding situation, year over year, it's growing, right? And that's because they're a growth-oriented company and they issue shares in order to raise capital. And because of that, somebody might go ahead and label Toast as atrocious. The one thing that I do want to call out is if we jump on over to their balance sheet and we look at their books, they have $1.8 billion of cash and cash equivalents. Meaning money that's invested into highly liquid choices that can be converted into cash overnight or in the next 48 hours, like a high yield savings account, CDs, money market funds, bonds, $1.8 billion, right? You scroll on down and you take a look at how much loans are on the books, all in $18 million of obligations. That's it. So once they're done paying off all the loans on the books with the cash on the books, they have $1.8 billion of cash left over. That money could be utilized to make an acquisition and merge with another company, to increase salaries, compensation, to do more R&D, to expand the business operation. This is a company that is flush in cash. And yes, they are diluting the shareholders, but at the end of the day, they're demolishing the numbers across the board. Now, I really want to go on my tiny little soapbox and give you a rant because for some people, they might be like, dude, they need to do share buybacks, otherwise they suck. And the reason why I'm going on such a rant is because somebody not too long ago, they literally said, I don't know what the heck I'm doing because I don't take into account the shares outstanding. But the reason why I'm going to show you this example is it doesn't matter about that as much as you would think. Because there's a company called Western Union. They're in the business of transferring cash from point A to point B. be highly utilized by the immigrant population in the US, but with the current administration kicking them out, their business model's really hurting. Okay? You take a look at their shares outstanding situation. This is a company that is buying back shares by the millions year after year. So you would think, oh, such a high quality, beautiful business. You tell me, is this a beautiful, high-quality business? Past 5 years, negative 57%. All I'm trying to say is sometimes buying back the shares is not the wisest and the best utilization of excess capital. I would rather see that capital be reinvested into the business so that you can make a pivot and be relevant in 2026 because your business model as it stands is dying. I don't care that you're buying back the shares when you are on a sinking ship. That's why when you look at metrics, financials, and fundamentals, you need to take everything into consideration, not just one freaking metric and then dismiss a company as a whole. That doesn't make any sense. Another one that I want to give a good example of, I know this one's going to hurt some feelings, but dude, next week, I'm probably going to jump in and become an official shareholder of PayPal because I do think in the not too distant future, I do think they're going to become an online bank. I think they're going to copy the SoFi playbook. They're slowly doing everything that SoFi is doing. The last thing that PayPal needs to do is become an official bank. But this is not a video about PayPal. So if we take a look at PayPal's situation as well, they're buying back the shares aggressively year after year. So what I'm seeing is 1.1 billion shares in 2022, right? You fast forward to today, now there's only 986 million shares because they have excess capital. And what they're doing is they're using that extra cash to buy back the shares. But what I would rather see is them implement a dividend. I've been saying that on the channel video after video. Lo and behold, now they pay a dividend. So I'm happy about that. And in regards to the share buybacks, I genuinely hope they pause and they freeze that instead to use that to hire better talent from Google, from OpenAI, from Tesla in order to ramp up their software product offerings and as they make their maneuver and transition into becoming a fully integrated bank. I think transferring payments, that was sexy and hot in 2007, 2009, but in 2026, there's no economic moat in that situation. There's Stripe, there's Cash App, there's Apple Pay, Google Pay. There's way too much competition. It's crowded. And if they continue to stay as a payment transferring type of fintech company, they're screwed. Something else that I want to call out is this is really concerning, but if we jump on over to PayPal's key performance indicators and we take a look at their transaction take rate, year over year, it's only getting smaller. So if somebody transfers like $100, in 2012, they were basically taking home 3% as like transaction fees and everything else baked in. Year over year, they're getting less and less and less take rate. That's really concerning. And that's why if I was an activist investor and I had billions of dollars invested into PayPal, I would be very vocal of them making that strategic shift in order to become a fully integrated digital bank. They need to do it. But circling back to how buying back the shares does not automatically mean a company is shiny and is a beautiful compounder, you would think because they're buying back the shares, oh, they should also be reflected in their stock price going in the green, right? You tell me. Negative 36% past 1 year. Past 5 years, negative 76%. And that's why I don't really care that much about the shares outstanding situation as long as your free cash flow, your earnings, and your business operations, if it's still increasing and growing and outpacing that of the shares outstanding, then I don't care. Let me give you a really good example, right? Amazon. If we scroll on down and take a look at their shares outstanding situation, it's only growing by the year because this is a company that is infamous for RSUs. And that's how they kind of trap you into their company. Like it doesn't vest until like after 3, 4, 5 years. My memory's a little foggy because it's been a while since I interviewed for their MBA leadership development program pipeline. So I don't remember the details. But having said that, are you really going to dismiss Amazon as a disgusting, hideous business because of their stock-based compensation? Come on, man. But anyways, I think I'm a terrible Uber driver because on the app, it told me that you wanted to be dropped off at Madison Square. And here I am driving us to Boston, right? I went totally off track. So when it comes to Toast, the restaurant-based one-stop shop, are they a good deal? I mean, let's go over it, right? Business quality, economic moat, I think phenomenal. They hit that. The check mark is right there. Financials and fundamentals, I think it looks great as well. So that's 2 out of the 3. But in terms of their valuation, I'll be honest with you, it's a tough sale. I mean, I know their top line and bottom line's growing at a ridiculous rate, but the facts are the PE ratio is still about a 29-30. I think if it was closer to like a 25, I'd be in that sign me up category. I think with Toast, I think they would be somewhere like right here, right? In between good and undervalued. Undervalued meaning it's a huge bargain, especially in this economy and market. Gosh, but that looks really dirty, right? It doesn't really look clean. Okay, we'll go ahead and put Toast right here, right next to Intuit. I think between the two of them, I think I would rather go with Toast. And I say that because the future uncertainties surrounding Intuit, I think there's a lot more question marks for them. Whereas for Toast, it's super easy to understand their business model. And I'm really bullish about the restaurant space when we think about Domino's, McDonald's, Chipotle. So I'd rather go with Toast, but I do think they're both peers. Let's move on to the next one, and I promise I won't go on a crazy tangent like that anymore. Next one is going to be Duolingo. And I'm going to be using their mascot, which is the owl. Duolingo is a mobile app that is a social media community-based learning for chess, math, music, and languages. That way you can flirt with your girlfriend that lives in Mexico and she doesn't care that your hairline is receding. And Duolingo is one of those things where you either believe in them or you don't. Because I'll tell you this right now, right? Their numbers are the real deal. But I personally do not believe in their hype. I don't think they have any economic moat. And even though they're on a massive sell-off, year to date, 14% into the red, past 1 year, 53% into the red, I still think they're overvalued, okay? Their current trading multiple is an 18.6, and that's because there was a lot of accounting engineering going on, but their real trading multiple is at 37.8. So out of all the companies that we have addressed today, they are pound for pound the most expensive in terms of their valuation. But one thing that I want to do is let me pull open my ghetto-ass calculator. So $150 a share, and I want to divide it by their free cash flow per share to see what their trading multiple would be in terms of their free cash flow. And their free cash flow per share is $7.38. So $7.38. So their trading multiple is a 20.3 in terms of the price at the free cash flow. So that's a lot more digestible and palatable. This is a company where their numbers make all the sense in the world, like I said, right? It's the real deal. But I think it's one of those things where people are going to wake up and realize that Duolingo is a scam. You're not actually learning anything. And I've said it again and again on this channel that yes, I understand that it's not a primary modality to drive learning. I get that. It's a secondary resource that you should be using on the side. What they have done is they gamified the process of whenever you're stuck on the toilet for like 10 to 15 minutes, you pop open your phone and you scroll on Duolingo instead of Instagram, right? I get it. I think this is a company that's going to fall to the same fate as Chegg. And I know people get so mad whenever I make that comparison because Chegg, just like Duolingo, they also had phenomenal numbers until AI got rolled out to the masses, right? ChatGPT, Grok, Perplexity, Gemini. Their numbers, no matter what metric or fundamental we're looking at, it looks great. Okay, we can all agree on that. But when you're priced with a 38 as your trading multiple, I'm telling you, I do not think they're a good deal at $150 a share, let alone $130, $120, or even like $100. What I'm saying is, when it comes to Duolingo, I would probably give them a serious look when they reach 100 a share. That's what I said in my deep dive analysis video about Duolingo. I said they're going to reach 100. Once they hit 99, I will personally add them to my watch list. When it comes to categorizing them into one of the columns here, the business quality, I do not think they have an economic moat whatsoever. And in the age of AI and learning, and this is an unpopular opinion, but I think more and more people are going to go back to the old school ways of going to a traditional classroom or meeting up with a group of people in order to learn a new concept, such as music, such as chess, such as Spanish. I think learning through this cute little app that's a game, it's fun. But once you realize how much time you waste not learning anything at the end of the day, you're going to get riled up and you're going to cancel that subscription. And during an economic downturn, people are not going to cancel their Netflix subscription. People aren't going to cancel their Costco membership. They will cancel their Duolingo membership. You can quote me on that. So in terms of their business quality, dude, I'm bearish. I don't feel it. Their financials look great. Their valuation, I think it's still far too fat. So they have 1 out of the 3 in my opinion. So when it comes to Duolingo, don't get me wrong, I do think they're okay, but I don't think they're the best deal out here. And especially their value proposition, I guess I just don't buy into the hype. So I would put them somewhere like right here, no way Jose to maybe. But I feel like that's a little too harsh because their numbers look really good, right? So I guess we'll leave them right here for now into the maybe pile. And I hate to be that guy because I know other YouTubers and folks on the internet, you guys are all bullish about Duolingo, but I'll be honest with you, I was really shocked when all of y'all were going gung-ho and buying into them when they were $350 or even $500 a share. I was gasping. I was like, are you serious? But I think that's also because I'm a value investor and I can't justify buying into a company when it's trading for that much of a premium. With this type of pullback and correction, I told you, my spider senses are now tingling. But let's move to the next company, and that's going to be the Trade Desk. Ticker symbol TTD. They operate an open internet digital advertising platform that lets companies place their ads in front of the right eyes. So Hulu, Disney, Roku, Peacock, Paramount, and others. So I don't know, if you're trying to roll out a cheeseburger chain and you're new to this market, you probably wouldn't want that advertisement to be wasted in the eyes of a vegan, right? You want that to be front and center of somebody that likes hamburgers and stuff. But anyways, if we take a look at their trading multiple, it's an 18. Past 1 year, it's rough, okay? Negative 70%. And I'll be honest with you, I'm in the red with this one. I'm personally, I think it's like 12% into the red. My cost basis is like $41, $42 a share. So yeah, that's the reality. Their revenue situation though, I mean, look at this, right? $100 million to $2.8 billion in the span of 10 years. And the growth rate is just absolutely insane. Take a look at their bottom line per share. Fundamentally and financially, the Trade Desk, it looks beautiful. I think most software companies, I think their financials all look really good. And that's because it's asset light. They don't really have capital expenditures. They're not manufacturing phones or cars. So the cost to do business, it's not that high, but the margins are also very wide. And I think there's a lot of buzz and hesitation from Wall Street because Amazon has entered into their territory of the open internet instead of just staying in their walled garden. To be honest with you, I think there's enough fish to fry for everyone, right? Advertising, it doesn't have to necessarily just be with Amazon or just with Google. If you're trying to have a legitimate campaign in selling new sneakers or cheeseburgers or hair transplants in Turkey, you want it across a diversified format. In the open internet, on Amazon, on YouTube, everywhere, Facebook. You don't want to just go with one platform. Does that make sense? So when I think about Trade Desk, I'm like, dude, the numbers are still really solid. The market hates them. So I guess I understand the pain of Duolingo shareholders. It's like, dude, everything makes sense with the Trade Desk. It's just the narrative surrounding this company is priced as if they're dying, but they're actually growing and thriving. So it's kind of like Adobe, it's kind of like Salesforce. Every single one of these companies, there's a narrative surrounding that it's the end of them, right? So with the Trade Desk, I think their business model is going to be resilient in the face of Amazon encroaching upon their territory because even Google had to throw in the towel and give up on trying to compete with them in the open internet space. Amazon's going to learn that lesson the hard way. Now, I understand that Amazon's going to be undercutting the Trade Desk as they gain more ground, but the Trade Desk's proprietary software and platform, from my understanding, it costs more, but it's pound for pound the best for a reason. So number one, I think solid. Number two, Great. And in terms of their valuation, remember, their trading multiple is an 18. And if we do it by their free cash flow, just for fun, right? Let's see, 35.48 divided by, what's their free cash flow per share? Who's the first one to say it? Say it out loud and say it with confidence. Say it with your chest. Is $1.38. So their trading multiple in the current tense would be a 25.7. Their forward trading multiple based on their earnings per share is an 18. I think they're undervalued. So I would go ahead and place them right here. But all else being equal, I feel like Adobe and Salesforce are slightly ahead of the trade desk. But I also feel like it's not fair to place them into this bucket right here because they're not missing any one of them. They checked every single one of the three. So I think there has to be a gap, right? Adobe and Salesforce, clearly the best, in my opinion, in this economy and market. The trade desk, though, it makes so much sense on paper. I guess we'll see what happens at their next earnings. And the next software company is ServiceNow, ticker symbol NOW. And ServiceNow sells an enterprise software that manages the entire workflow across an organization or a company. They handle the IT tickets for when your laptop won't connect to the freaking Wi-Fi. Dude, that always annoyed me when I used to work in corporate. But anyways, they also deal with compliance tasks, customer service issues, and cybersecurity problems. So they do a lot, okay? And as we take a look at some of their numbers, I think it's phenomenal based on when I was doing my preliminary research. Yeah, dude, their numbers are funny. This is ridiculously good. Top line looks good. Bottom line looks good. I mean, they had some volatility roughly 8, 9, 10 years ago, but I think they're in smooth sailing seas now. What's their free cash flow situation? Flush in cash, looks really good. Balance sheet, $5.4 billion of cash on the books. Checks out, looks pretty good. Let me take a look at the overview. Ooh, trading multiple is 77, but the forward trading multiple is at 33. I mean, I get it. The numbers kind of justify it, but dang, dude, that's a tough one to swallow. That's what she said. But the valuation's fat, okay? We have to be honest. But dang, dude, they're going on a sell-off beyond belief. Negative 40% past 365 days. Past 5 years, then you're in the green by 23.9%. That's tough. With this one, I would have to do a technical analysis to figure out if they're reaching a line of support so they can bounce off of it, or if they're free-falling just like Intuit. So I think what's happening here is because they were priced for a premium, I think as the whole sector is getting punished, I think they're getting punished to another degree of severity. I want to take a look at their forward trading multiple in the past. Sometimes it hovers around 80, sometimes around a 90, and in the past few years, around a 60 to 67. Now it's a 32, so dang. So I guess in comparison to their own DNA and timeline evaluation, I guess they're undervalued, but they are still priced for a premium. That's a lot to take into account. So with ServiceNow, when it comes to their business quality, I personally do not have any experience using their product offerings. I don't really know too much about this company. So with that one, I would give a question mark. I don't know. Like, is AI really going to make their workflow management software obsolete? I don't know, okay? Their financials, it checks out to me. I think it looks really good. But their valuation, this one can be up in the air. I think in comparison to their own timeline, I think it's a good deal. It's a good bargain in terms of their forward trading multiple being a 32, 33, whereas historically it's around a 60 to 70. Obviously, in a perfect world, I would rather see their PE be like a 20, 21. Actually, let me do that right now. I want to do it based on their free cash flow. So 127.31 divided by, I had a brain fart right there. I pressed the enter button. We're going to divide it by their free cash flow per share, which is $3.78. So their trading multiple would be at 33.6. Well, at least that's a little more palatable than a 77, right? Still, having said that, I think their valuation's still a little too fat. So I would argue they have 1.5 out of the 3. I think ServiceNow, this is a company that I have no desire, but if I were to do a deep dive and I find out certain elements that I'm not tracking right now, that could absolutely change my opinion and commentary, right? I just don't know enough about the company. So 1.5 out of 3, I think being next to Duolingo is more than fair for now. And having said that, I think that's the perfect time for me to segue and get the heck out of here because I know some of you are bullish on ServiceNow and I don't want to step on toes. We're going to stop here for now. If you're curious about part 2, then you should subscribe because I will talk to you then. Because in part 2, we're going to talk about even more software stocks.